And near-death experience is an extraordinary conscious experience, and what we call a near-death experience is a reported memory of this special state of consciousness with universal elements like being out of the body, seeing a tunnel, a light, a life review, meeting deceased relatives, meeting a border, and the conscious return back into the body. And these near-death experiences happen in critical medical situations like cardiac arrest, coma by traffic accidents, of stroke, loss of blood, complicated childbirth with young women, nearly drowning with children, but also in diseases not directly life-threatening, or in NDE-like experience also happen in depression, existential crisis, fear death, like an imminent traffic accident, of mountaineering accidents, meditation, or without any obvious reason. And the same kind of experience also can happen in a terminal phase of illness, which are called the end-of-life experiences. And the essence of this experience is that there is a transformation. All people change. They lose the fear of death. They have a new insight what is important in life. It's about love and compassion, first towards yourself, accept your own negative aspects. Compassion, feeling connected with other people, with nature, with the planet Earth. And the third aspect is enhanced intuitive sensitivity. So these kind of experiences are called spiritual transformative experiences. The universal elements, like the tunnel, or meeting deceased relatives, or a life review, sometimes future events as well, have been reported in all times, and all religions and all cultures. Plato writes about classical near-death experience, the Sol de Ur, 2,500 years ago. So when you have indigenous people that have the same kind of experience, aboriginals, indigenous people from Africa, from America, have the same experiences as well. So it's not dependent of your religion, your culture, of your age. What is different is that children will use different words as adults, and Christians will use different words as atheists or Buddhists. So it is an ineffable experience, and you try to find words from your own culture and background to put it into words, but it is in essence an ineffable experience. There are no words for it. Most near-death experiences are positive emotional experiences, although about 15% of them are in a dark space, which can be frightening, and perhaps about 2 or 3% of those patients stay in this dark space and can have kind of hellish experiences like Dante describes in Divina Commedia, the Divine Comedy. But it is rather rare. We don't know the exact numbers because people with a positive near-death experience are also reluctant to share their experience with others because people don't believe them. Physicians, nurses, family members don't believe them, so they keep silent. When you have a frightening experience, there's even more reason not to talk about it because you feel guilty as well. Well, until '88, there was a lot of theories about NDE. It was just lack of oxygen in the brain, neurotransmitters, it was hallucination, it was a dream, false memories, etc. So in 1988, we started a prospective study in survivors of cardiac arrest in 10 Dutch hospitals, and we interviewed 344 survivors of cardiac arrest to see if we could find an explanation for the cause and content of the NDE. And what we found that 18% of those patients reported an NDE with all the classical elements, as I told you before. And what could be the cause? Well, if patients had a period of unconsciousness of 2 minutes, or 5 minutes, or 3 weeks in coma, it didn't matter at all. If they have a cardiac arrest, or 2 minutes, or 5 minutes, or 8 minutes, it didn't matter at all. If you had a very short cardiac arrest in the cath lab didn't matter at all. If you have complicated CPR, where you had artificial respiration, didn't matter at all. So the severity of the lack of oxygen in the brain didn't play any role. We could exclude lack of oxygen in the brain as a cause for NDE. We also found that medication didn't play any role. Psychological reasons like fear of death didn't play any role. Foreknowledge that you know that this experience can happen didn't play any role at all. Gender didn't play any role. Religion, if they were Christian or atheist, didn't matter at all. So there was no scientific explanation why just 18 people had this NDE. And we had also a longitudinal study with taped interview after 2 years and 8 years of all patients who were alive and had an NDE with a matched control group of patients with the same age and time interval and gender who had survived cardiac arrest without NDE to see if the transformation you hear about is significant. What we found that only patients with an NDE had this classical transformation. No fear of death, no insight was it important in life, and enhanced intuitive sensitivity. So the transformation is not due to the cardiac arrest, but just due to the near-death experience. And this is the objective aspect of the subjective experience. We cannot prove what people think or what people feel. There's no explanation from the current science because we could exclude lack of oxygen in the brain, we could exclude psychological explanation, we could exclude pharmacological explanations. So the only thing is that we can say that we can understand the cause of NDE when we know that the brain does not produce consciousness, that consciousness is always there, beyond time and space. And where the brain doesn't function at all, we are able to be in contact in this non-local consciousness with the possibility of perception, cognition, emotions, memory, etc. It's always there. And when you measure EEGs, what you can do in studies as well, what has been done, then we see that the EEG flatlines within 10 to 20 seconds. So there is no electrical activity at all from the brain you can measure. And in these circumstances, people have an enhanced consciousness, much more conscious than ever, with the possibility of perception out and above the body. They can have memories from early childhood. They are connected with the consciousness of others as well. So when you took some plaything from your little girl, 5 years, you know how sad she was. You feel the consciousness of others as well. You can have future events. And you have a cardiac arrest of 2-3 minutes. You can talk for 1 week because everything happens at the same moment. In this kind of enhanced consciousness, there's no time and no space. Everything happens at the same time. So that's why we call it non-local. Non-local is a concept from quantum physics, which means everything is connected beyond time and beyond space. And that's what people tell us about their own experience. So there is cognition, memories, emotions during a period that the brain doesn't function at all. And we can prove, because of our corroboration of veridical perception from people out and above the body during CPR, that these experiences happen at the moment that the brain doesn't function at all. So it happens after 30 seconds or later. So we can prove that it happens when the brain doesn't function. So because of the studies on the death experience, we have to question again the never proven hypothesis that the brain produces consciousness. Because there's no brain function left in cardiac arrest, and patients have much more consciousness and enhanced consciousness when the brain doesn't function at all. when you're out of your body during a near-death experience, and you can perceive your own resuscitation, CPR, with the lifeless body up there, or your own surgery, your own operation. And you know what is being said. You can see it from position out and above your body. And you corroborate the veridical perceptions. Then you can prove that they were out of the body at the moment that the brain didn't function at all, that there was circulation. No circulation, no breathing, no heartbeat at all. So Olaf Blanke had doing some triggering in the brain and tells people that they had out-of-body experience, but they had out-of-body illusions. Nobody had veridical perception, real veridical perception. Only one patient had a distorted look of his legs, but nobody was out of her body and could describe the circumstances where they were living. So there were, and also the title of his articles is about out-of-body illusions. It's not an out-of-body perception. So that's the difference.
What's the difference?
Well, an illusion is not real. Illusion is not the reality. But perception you can corroborate. You can find out and ask people what happens. When they have out of their body, they can look through the walls of a hospital. They can go to family members who are just nervous and having a cigarette, but they never smoked. They said, "You were smoking a cigarette." How do you know? Because they were there. So that is veridical perception, which you can ask nurses and doctors and family members what really happens, and it fits. When you try to induce out-of-body experience, you just have illusions. You can never ask anybody what really happens because they don't know. I was raised with the concept that the brain produces consciousness. I learned it on medical school, I learned it at the university. And until I met so many people who had a near-death experience with the emotional account of what happens to them. And we did a study, prospective study on NDE, survivors of cardiac arrest. It took me many years to accept that what I've learned was wrong. I am now quite sure that consciousness is not a product of brain function. So the brain functions as an interface, or as a transmitter, or as a filter, to receive just several aspects of the non-local enhanced consciousness into a waking consciousness. So you can also ask, where is your consciousness when you're sleeping? It's always there, but you don't feel it. You don't have it in your body. So when you're under general anesthesia, you don't feel conscious, but it's still there. So to understand this non-local consciousness beyond time and space, it's always everywhere. I compare it with the iCloud. There are 1 billion websites or 1 billion YouTube films always here, also now in this very moment, going through your body, through this room, etc. But you need a functional instrument to receive it. So where you put on your computer, you can have websites set from this iCloud, just a small part of it. But the computer does not produce the websites and YouTube. It's just the interface. And it's the same for the brain. The brain doesn't produce it, but it receives information from the body and senses and sends it to consciousness, and receives information from consciousness back into the body, which is called awakened consciousness. So what we've learned from patients with an NDE is death is just the end of our body. But death is not the end of our consciousness. There's a continuity of consciousness always there. So consciousness has no beginning and will never end. It's always there. For me, it's even fundamental in the universe. It's primary in the universe. Information and consciousness is primary in the universe, and everything comes from consciousness. Well, when you believe that death is the end of who you are, that death is the end of our consciousness, but still a lot of people believe that you live differently. You put all your energy into the external world. You put your energy into money, to houses, to big cars, a lot of holidays, eating meat, destroy the planet. When you know there is a continuity of consciousness, that everything is connected, that what you do to others will come back to yourself, positive and negative aspects. What you do to nature will come back to yourself. You will live differently. You will have different food. You will treat nature different. You will be very careful with planet Earth, etc. So the way you live, it's not in a competitive society, but being connected with other people as well. Well, you asked me about the scientific world. What you mean is the current Western science is based on materialism. It's based on what we can objectify, what we can measure and duplicate. Now, what I told you before, consciousness, conscious experiences, what you think, what you feel, and also near-death experiences, you cannot objectify and measure. So it's beyond the current materialist science. You have to expand science to include subjective experiences, because subjective experiences like NDEs we cannot measure, we cannot objectify, we cannot duplicate and not falsify. So it's beyond our current materialist science. So we have to change our concepts in science to include subjective experiences. What you think and what you feel is real, but nobody can prove it in material. We cannot measure it at all. What we can measure is neural correlates. We can measure changes in electric activity in the brain, changes in blood flow in the brain, changes in magnetic activity in the brain, depending on changes in thoughts and feelings. That's what we can measure is neural correlates. We cannot measure the content of consciousness. We cannot measure what we feel and what we think. Just changing activities, and that's it. There's no biological basis for consciousness. There's no beginning, nor will there ever be an end to consciousness. So death is just the end of our physical aspects. It's just the end of our body, not the end of our consciousness. So death, like birth, will be a changing state of consciousness. Your consciousness changes. And we also know from science, nothing will disappear in the universe. It will only change of states. Energy can change in mass, E is mc squared from Rijnstate, but it will never disappear. Nothing disappears in the universe, but it can change states. So energy will change. Consciousness will change, but it will never disappear. There's a continuity of consciousness.